Welcome back. So, Coffin, I chose this article because this caught my attention. Having your pain invalidated. I was like, what does that mean? How can someone tell you you're not hurt? Like what? So let's read this one. It's from PsyPost by Beth Elwood. This was made today. Nice. In the depression section. Findings from the journal Frontiers in Psychology shed light on the link between pain invalidation and risk of depression. This one's a pretty short article, but I don't really mind. The study found that participants who felt invalidated in their pain experienced greater shame and, in turn, greater symptoms of depression. What does that mean? Pain is a subjective experience that is imperceptible. How do you pronounce that? It's big words, man.
Imperceptible.
Pain is a subjective experience that is imperceptible to others. Because of this, people who are experiencing pain often have their pain downplayed by others around them, including nurses and doctors. This invalidation can show up in a few different ways. In some cases, an outsider acknowledges a person's pain experience but does not believe that it requires support, and in other cases, an outsider might not believe that pain exists at all. That's so crazy that, like, a doctor will straight up tell you, "No, you're not hurting." Like, nah, bro, you're straight up lying to me. How would they know if you're telling them this shit hurts? Why would they ever say, "Oh, you're lying"? Unless you have like a unless. Importantly, having one's pain invalidated can lead to stigmatization and may even exacerbate pain's severity. Pain invalidation has also been associated with a range of poor mental health outcomes. In particular, pain invalidation has been repeatedly tied to depression and study authors Brandon L. Boring, nice, and his team say this may have something to do with shame. You know this dude was like straight up bullied into becoming a scientist or whatever he does, psychologist. Shame is a feeling of inadequacy, self consciousness, and low self worth. Okay? Pain on its own has been associated with shame, and Boring and colleagues suggest that these feelings may be intensified when pain is being dismissed by others. So you'll feel way more shame. Well, yeah, that makes sense. If you like go to a doctor and you're like, oh yeah, I'm hurt, and they're like, no, you're not hurt, yeah, you would definitely feel a lot of shame, like, oh, maybe I'm an idiot and I'm not really hurting and I don't really have a stomach ulcer. But you know what? Doctors are wrong all the time. So if you feel something, you should get checked up. And if one doctor says no, then go to another doctor and go get checked up. The researchers conducted a study to explore the relationship between pain invalidation, depression, and shame among a sample of college students. A total of 478 students were involved in the study. Most, 328 participants, were female, 139 were male. 10 did not disclose their gender, and one identified as other. None of the students were currently suffering from chronic pain. The participants answered questionnaires that assessed pain and validation from three domains: friends, family, and medical professionals. The questions prompted students to consider how each of these types of people had reacted to the student's pain experience in the past year. The respondents also completed assessments of shame and depression. How would they remember that though? I have such a terrible memory, so I just don't see how people could remember a whole year's worth of emotions. That's a lot to try and process for this study. Maybe maybe if they're doing it ongoing, like you assess the past and then you do a year in the study, like that would make more sense. The prevalence of pain and validation was remarkably high among the students. Nearly all participants, 99.4%, reported at least some pain and validation from family members. Yeah, dude, family don't be caring. Similarly, 98.9% reported pain and validation from friends, makes sense, and 95.5% reported pain and validation from doctors. That's pretty surprising. What the fuck? As expected, pain and validation from any of these sources were significantly associated with both shame and depression. All these, well, I mean, I guess the unless this was like a blind study and they picked random, students, it would make sense that they would attract the people that feel invalidated by others. If if that's how they advertise it. Oh, we're doing a a study on pain invalidation, and then you're gonna attract people that feel like their pain has been invalidated. So unless this was we're just looking for 400 students to do a study, then it might be a little skewed. Shame fully mediated the relationship between each source of pain invalidation and depression. In other words, having one's pain invalidated by others, whether by friends, family, or medical professionals, predicted greater feelings of shame and in turn elevated symptoms of depression. Notably, these effects were consistent among men and women, except for pain invalidation from doctors, which was trending in the same direction but not significant among men. Predicted greater feelings of shame. Hmm. These findings suggest that shame is a crucial mechanism through which pain invalidation encourages depression. When other people invalidates a person's pain, they may communicate that the person in pain is not worthy of empathy or support. That makes sense. The researchers doesn't make sense that they're not worthy of it, but that's how the person would feel if they were invalidated. If you like told them like you're a fucking bullshitter, they're definitely gonna be like, oh, this guy don't get me. This in turn may cause the person suffering from pain to question their own subjective state and their value as human, creating feelings of shame and inadequacy. These feelings combined with continued experience of pain may then lead to depression, which is crazy because then depression actually makes you more sensitive to pain, so you feel pain more when you're depressed, which is like a different thing that I read. The findings are especially so this is like a very very troubling cycle here. The findings are especially troubling. The study authors say given evidence that depression increases the likelihood that acute pain becomes chronic pain. So like if you're depressed and you have like a pain in your hand, because I have a pain in my hand, now I'm depressed. Nice. You would like fixate on that pain, right? Then you would like constantly feel it and kind of exacerbate it. And I feel like the more you think about that pain, the more you could potentially inadvertently do something to make that pain, appear. Like you might use that hand more often, or you might use that foot more often, or whatever the case is. If you have maybe a headache, maybe um you'll like constantly be thinking about it and like watching more TV, blah blah blah. Like subconsciously doing more to exacerbate that pain because it's what you're fixated on at that moment. However, in order to extend the clinical implications, a similar study should be conducted among people experiencing chronic pain. The researchers discuss ways for people to improve their reactions to others experiencing pain. Listening to the pain reported by patients and validating their subjective pain experiences may foster interpersonal trust between patients and providers and improve pain outcomes. Boring and his colleagues say, furthermore, broader cultural understanding about the subjective nature of pain and the importance of social support for those experiencing pain may protect against the mutually reinforcing depression pain cycle. I don't remember if that's what they called it in the other article, but I definitely remember reading that depression leads to a higher sensitivity to pain, and pain from this leads to a higher likelihood of depression. So you're kind of like stuck in this hurting yourself cycle to feel, then you're depressed, blah blah blah. And it's definitely something that if you feel like you're in this, you should definitely go get help or talk to someone that will validate you. But okay, bye. Good luck.